We're living in a time when artificial intelligence and supercomputing are booming.
Now let's talk about artificial intelligence.
2023 was when AI went from nerdy jargon to a daily part of politics, entertainment.
ChatGPT, dude.
ChatGPT hit 100 million users, that's monthly active users, in just 2 months.
But here is something most people don't think about. This powerful AI model need insanely powerful processors to run. If you look at the supercomputing processor market today, you will notice one company that has skyrocketed to a $2 trillion valuation in just few years. Guys, I'm talking about none other than NVIDIA.
NVIDIA, now a $3 trillion company, the second largest company in the US by market cap.
But here is the crazy part. NVIDIA started with just $40,000 and had almost zero chance of success. At one point, they were just 30 days away from shutting down.
He said this for many, many years, we're only 30 days away from going out of business.
So how did a company that was hanging by a thread broke the Intel and AMD monopoly and became the most valuable chip maker in the world? And most importantly, what can we learn from it? To answer that, let's rewind to late 1990s and early 2000. Back then, the world of processor was dominated by Intel and AMD. They were building it out in the CPU space, launching newer, faster, better processor every year.
Intel, the computer inside.
It was $1 billion race and both companies were constantly trying to outgun each other. If you were a startup, stepping into this fight was like showing up to a tank war with a water pistol. Yet three guys, Jensen Huang, Chris Malachowski and Curtis Prim, decided to do something insane. Chris and Curtis were working on graphics at Sun Microsystem, but they decided to quit their job and build their own company. But they were not sure of what company they were building, so they decided to reach out to Jensen, who was working a stable job at LSI Logic, and asked him if he would like to join their company. At first, Jensen wasn't interested. He had a steady paycheck and a family to take care of. But after several deep conversations, they finally sat down at a Danish dinner in East Sanjo and laid out the crazy dream that would become NVIDIA. So what was their vision? They believed that multimedia would be the future of personal computer. Back then, PCs were boring. They didn't have microphone, speaker, or powerful graphics. But video games were becoming a hot trend. So their idea was simple but powerful, bringing 3D graphics card to the normal PC. At that point, there was a lot of graphics manufacturing company. But why did world need NVIDIA? When the world was running after 2D graphics card, NVIDIA was going for 3D. Back then, Intel and AMD were the king of game. Instead of trying to beat them in their own game, they focused on something everyone was ignoring: graphics processor for gamers. So their target audience was clear, but the problem was
gaming, it just didn't have a lot of respect. It just didn't feel like a first-year business that everybody got and everybody appreciated.
And the overall gaming market was much smaller at the time versus the market for movies and other media forms.
From starting the company in 1993, they launched their first product, NV1, in 1995. The first mainstream multimedia processor, but it was a complete disaster. The NV1 tried to do everything in one chip: 3D graphics, video processing, audio, game port support, input-output connectivity, even a complex programming model called UDA. It sounds powerful, right? But there was one big problem. It was overpriced and no one wanted it. It was like octopus, Jensen Huang later said. The chip even came with dongles sticking out everywhere, which only added the confusion to the consumer. Jensen Huang described it as a Swiss Army knife, full of tools, full of potential, but the market didn't want a Swiss Army knife. It wanted a sharp blade, a 3D graphics card that was fast and cheap. They had partnered with Diamond Multimedia, who initially ordered 250,000 units. Guess what happened? 249,000 units were returned. It almost killed the company. From this failure, NVIDIA learned a brutal but valuable lesson. It wasn't a technological problem, but it was a market fit problem. The NV1 didn't fit into any category. It wasn't a best graphic card, it wasn't best sound card, and That confused everyone because when people go for shopping, they don't want a confusing all-in tool. They just wanted a right tool for the job. This brutal experience forced NVIDIA to rethink everything from strategy, pricing, positioning to understanding the competition. It was painful, but it laid the foundation. Jensen later reflected, "You could write a book on the mistakes we made in the first 3 years." After their first big flop of the NV1 chip, they were hanging on by a thread. NVIDIA had partnered with Sega, the gaming giant behind the hits like Virtua Fighter, Daytona USA, Virtua Cop. Sega was planning their next generation gaming console, and NVIDIA was right in the mix, helping to build it. NVIDIA was developing NV2 chip tailor-made to bring Sega's arcade magic to PCs. Things were finally looking up for NVIDIA. But another twist, NVIDIA had designed both NV1 and NV2 around image rendering architecture based on quadrangle. It was a clever at the time, but turned out to be a completely wrong because suddenly the entire industry started shifting to a different standard that was triangle. Microsoft had just dropped DirectX with Windows 95, which supports triangle rendering system. And everyone, literally 50 other companies, were also using triangle rendering. But the NVIDIA was only one was still using quadrangle. So now imagine this, you are in a race, but you are building a car for the wrong track and you realize it too late. Now, here is the things get crazier. Jensen Huang, the CEO, was stuck in this nightmare decision. Finish the Sega console chip and go broke in 2 years, and cancel the contract and go broke right now. Dead end in both the ways. But instead of panicking, Jensen does something wild. He goes to Sega's CEO and says, "Hey, can we not just finish the chip and not deliver anything and still get paid?" Well, they paid $5 million to just walk away. No product, no chip, just vibe and faith. And it literally saved them from dying. Now, with that last bit of cash, they had one final shot, one last bullet in the chamber. They had to build a new chip and it had to work on the first try. Normally in chip designing, you have to build it, you have to test it, fix bug, and then try again. It takes like a year and a half. NVIDIA didn't have that kind of time or money. But Jensen wasn't ready to give up. He made the hardest decision of his life, laid off half the company, and used every last dollar to build a new chip from scratch using triangle architecture. No time, no room for mistake, no guarantee it would work. But the result, Riva 128. A chip that sold 1 million units in just 4 months. That is how, ladies and gentlemen, they saved the company, which was 30 days away from going out of business. But NVIDIA didn't stop there. In 1999, they launched their masterpiece, the GeForce 256, world's first GPU. It didn't just power games, it unlocked computing power itself. Even Microsoft came calling. They signed NVIDIA to build the graphics chips for their original Xbox. It was a $200 million deal. That money gave them oxygen and the Xbox gave them credibility. From there, NVIDIA went into beast mode, acquiring rivals like 3DFX and expanded their reach to another level. By the mid 2000, NVIDIA had dominated the gaming GPU space. Graphics chips that are only focused for gamers. But in PC market, doesn't matter how ahead you are, your competitor always catches up. So Jensen had to think 10 years up ahead. In 2006, NVIDIA released CUDA, a platform that let developers use GPU for general computing, not just for graphics or video games. At first, no one cared. People thought Jensen was crazy. Then in 2012, a researcher team used NVIDIA GPUs to train a deep learning model called AlexNet. It crushed all benchmarks in image recognition, and just like that, AI revolution began. Suddenly, every AI researchers, data centers, and startup wanted NVIDIA chips, but not for gaming, but for artificial intelligence. While Intel and AMD were still obsessed with CPU power, NVIDIA had already pivoted to parallel computing and deep learning. The result today, NVIDIA powers ChatGPT, Tesla automobile driving, scientific simulators, crypto mining, high-end video editing, and yes, your favorite video games. In 2023, NVIDIA made $60 billion in revenue. Over 50% of came from AI and data centers. In 2025 fiscal year, NVIDIA recorded revenue of 130.5 billion US dollars, up from the 60.9 US billion dollars in 2024. They became the most valuable chip company on the planet. So what can we learn from NVIDIA's story? Don't play the old game, invent a new one. NVIDIA always bet on future. When every chip company was choosing 2D processor, NVIDIA chose to work on 3D. When there was no market for their product, they created one. While Intel and AMD were stuck in the CPU war, NVIDIA built an empire by focusing on GPUs. CUDA was ignored for years, but when AI exploded, NVIDIA was already there. Today, NVIDIA is shaping the future of AI, robotics, space, medicine, you name it. And they are spending billions of dollars researching and developing future technology. So guys, if you enjoyed this story, share it with your friends who loves businesses, tech or startup. And don't forget to subscribe for more real business stories that inspire. See you in the next video.